Good morning and welcome to Drew's Book Review. So today we're going to talk about something a little bit different. We're not actually talking about a book that I've read recently, but rather I want to talk a little bit about my journey into becoming such an avid book reader and something that I've grown to love so much, and how I really kind of got into the whole avid reader thing. So if you want to know more, stay tuned. My journey to becoming an avid reader starts with Star Trek. That's right, I'm a Trekkie. I've been a Trekkie for such a long time, an insane amount of time, as long as I can remember even. So this goes all the way back to my junior high days, and honestly, before junior high, I wasn't much of a reader at all. It's just not something that I was doing a lot of, but when it came in, once I got into grade 7, 8, 9, I had to read. It was part of my education, part of my English class. I was expected to hand in regular book reports. So naturally, as a Trekkie, I thought, well, if I've got to read, then I'm just going to read something that I enjoy, that I like if I have to. So I started reading Star Trek. And this is kind of where it all started. All I would read is Star Trek. Every book, every time, always a Trek book. Never anything else, just a Trek book. And there are 3 Trek books that still stick out in my mind today, and to be honest, it's been so long since I've read them, I barely even remember what they're about. But essentially, the 3 Trek books that stick out in my mind, the ones that I remember, the ones that I thought were the best of all the Trek, and the ones I still remember today, is Imzadi, Q Squared, and Federation. So these are the 3 that kind of stick out to me. Imzadi being about Riker and Troy's relationship, Q Squared, where you got it, it's all about Q. And Federation has to do with, Kirk and Picard and the Federation. And when it all comes down, said and done, those are really the only 3 that I remember out of all the Trek books that I've read. So it tells you something about how good these books are. Even if I don't even remember the basic plot, I still remember that I really love them. And maybe one day I'll go back and reread them. But with nothing but Trek on the mind, Trek books constantly going on, I had an English teacher who was happy I was reading, but wasn't happy about what I was reading, or rather, to be more accurate, wasn't happy about the fact that I would only read one type of book. And her name was Miss Duff. Miss Duff was an awesome teacher, but one day she came up to me and said, "Now you listen here, young man. I will not accept one more Star Trek book report from you. Do you understand? You need to read something else. Enough with the Star Trek book reports already." Of course, after that, I kind of had no choice anymore. I had to figure out something else to read. Inevitably, what did you expect would happen? Well, I picked up a book called The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams, a trilogy in 5 parts. Now, this is a great book. Miss Duff was happy that I read something other than Star Trek. But she rolled her eyes and said, "Really, Andrew? Another book about spaceships and aliens? Can you seriously not read anything else? Honestly, when I said to broaden your horizons, I didn't mean just read another book that has the same ideas of spaceships and aliens. You seriously need to pick something else up. I'll accept this, but you better read something other than a space book with aliens next time." So, despite that, I still went ahead and read this book. And I enjoyed this book. It was great. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It is a classic and one of the funniest books you can ever read. Books are Douglas Adams is absolutely hilarious. You got Arthur Dent, whose house is being bulldozed, only to be picked up by an alien buddy as they hitchhike a ride on a Vogon destructor fleet, and basically Mr. Arthur Dent finds out that he holds the key to Earth, which was nothing more than a giant computer program definitely go read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It is hilarious. I absolutely love that book. It is one of the best and funniest books that I've ever read in my life. Love The Hitchhiker's Guide, and I've reread it several times. Highly recommend it. But essentially, after reading The Hitchhiker's Guide, I wasn't allowed to read any more spaceship flying, any science fiction type books for my high school book reports, as per Miss Stuff. So we had to move on. We had to find something else to read, which, at that point, it's like, oh, but I just want to read these spaceship books. Like, this is what I like, right? So, but Miss Stuff, she really wanted me to expand my horizons, so to speak, broaden my reading material, and get beyond that science fiction spaceship type stuff. So I found a book called The Andromeda Strain by Michael Crichton. It was still science fiction, but it wasn't space science fiction. And so I thought, all right, fine, I guess I'll try this out. And then I've been hooked ever since. Love The Andromeda Strain, a story about this virus that gets loose and devastates the world kind of idea. And it's just, The Andromeda Strain was amazing. It just hooked me into Michael Crichton. I realized at that point that there are so many other good authors out there that write things other than spaceships and space type science fiction. And The Andromeda Strain is just amazing book. Absolutely loved it, and I got hooked on Michael Crichton. From that point on, I had to read everything that Michael Crichton ever wrote, and I picked up Congo, The Terminal Man, Jurassic Park, Sphere, and just everything that Michael Crichton ever wrote, I had to pick up, and I just started going nuts with the Michael Crichton. Absolutely loved it. Fell in love with Michael Crichton, and it just kind of took off from there. In terms of starting to broaden my expanding horizons. And this eventually led into reading other books. I still read a lot of science fiction, not so much fantasy at that point. One of the other book series that I picked up, as I started to realize that there's more out there than just Star Trek books, was Ender's Game, which has become one of my all-time favorite sci-fi fantasy books ever. Not so much fantasy, definitely more science fiction, but I kind of lump sci-fi fantasy into one a lot of the time. But Ender's Game, just wow, phenomenal book. Really, really loved it. Ender's Game is one of those books where people either hate it or love it. I'm in that camp where I love Ender's Game, and that eventually took me down the path of exploring the entire Enderverse and all the Ender's Game books that have been written by Orson Scott Card, and just really kind of fell in love with the whole Enderverse and the story and the vastness in which that story told. And just phenomenal, one of my favorite books of all time. And of course, this eventually led to getting into more science fiction and really expanding my science fiction repertoire. I've read so much science fiction since then. For me to remember everything I read just isn't going to be possible, but definitely this inspired me to go and get a better understanding of the broad universe and the broad, all-encompassing variety of science fiction that is out there. And one of my other favorite books that I came across was the Dune saga, so by Frank Herbert, just this all-encompassing awesomeness. So Dune, which has several books in, and it's not just Dune, that's only one of many of the Dune books. I mean, there's Heretics of Dune, Sisterhood of Dune, God Emperor Dune. There's so many in the whole Dune universe, which itself is a phenomenal universe. It's just vast, and it's just everything I love about science fiction. And the nice thing about Dune is it's one of those books that, like many good science fiction, it's not just science fiction. It's using science fiction more of a setting to explore ideas about humanity, philosophy, politics, ideas about human development and evolution, and just Dune is just all-encompassing and an amazing story, and I'm really looking forward to the Dune movies that are coming out soon. Really hope to see them soon, because those are just some great movies that I'm really looking forward to. Dune, definitely highly recommended. If you're a science fiction fan, go check it out. I hope at some point to maybe put up some video reviews of the Dune books myself on this channel, but I do want to go back and reread them first, so it might be a while before I get back to doing that. But overall, Dune, just amazing. And some other ones that I really came to love as a result of that is Isaac Asimov's Foundation, which again is one of those galactic empire-sized book series. Again, something I haven't read in a long time, but hope to get back to rereading it at some point, especially with the Foundation TV series coming to Netflix. Sorry, not Netflix, coming to Apple TV. So that's something that I'm really looking forward to seeing at some point as well. And from that, it just started expanding and snowballing everywhere into the fantasy genre. And now I've actually read more fantasy, I think, than I have science fiction. So some of the best fantasy series, of course, I know it might be a bit tropish or cliche, but yes, I absolutely love Lord of the Rings. And I'm rereading The Wheel of Time right now, and there's just so many good fantasy series out there that are just awesome and highly recommended. Definitely, this was my journey to broadening my horizon, and it all started with a good teacher, Miss Stuff, and I'm so glad that she inspired me to really broaden my horizons and explore the greater worlds that have been created in the science fiction fantasy genres. And it's just continued to go over there. I find I've read some, I'm starting to read a little bit of fiction here and there, into some nonfiction educational type books and content. And overall, just really grateful for a wonderful English teacher who had the willpower to say, no, I will not accept one more Star Trek book report, young man, and just really help expand my horizons to the whole vast universe of science fiction and fantasy, from Ender's Game, Dune, to Foundation series, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. In fantasy, we got Lord of the Rings, we got Powder Mage, we got Harry Potter, we got Wheel of Time. There's The Sword of Truth by Terry Goodkind, one of those sets that people either love or hate. But overall, there's just such an expansive universe of everything science fiction and fantasy, and it's awesome, just awesome. And I've been hooked ever since, and I just cannot envision a day where I won't be taking the time every day to do some reading and enjoying books. And this is kind of how it all started for me. This is where I'm at now. And I just wanted to share that bit of a story with you because it's something that I've come to absolutely love. And, definitely, I hope you'll continue to watch, enjoy, and check out my content. Of course, as always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And we will see you next time on the next episode of Drew's Book Reviews. Until then, keep on reading. Bye.